Impactful art doesn't need a big budget behind it. That's not what makes art good. A lot of 3D artists love being technically accurate. It doesn't matter, especially for stylized 3D.
There's something beautiful about the way that you explore light, shadows, shapes.
You need to consume things that you like, do experiences that you like, in order to figure out what you like to make. Paying attention is really valuable. I like the way the light shines through the leaves, so I figured out how to do that in 3D. You're seeing a lot more small teams competing with larger studios.
What kind of impact do you think that has on indie filmmakers using open source software?
That's something that we're going to see more of, I think.
What advice would you give them?
Very short and very bad. You just gotta be bad until you're good.
Today's episode, we're talking to an incredible artist, Caleb Worcester. He's made a film entirely in Blender. It's got breathtaking visuals, an emotive narrative, and it explores the impermanence of life. We dive into Caleb's creative process, the challenges of indie filmmaking, and the power of open source tools like Blender. And talk of the man himself. Hey, Caleb.
How's it going?
Oh, good, man. How are you?
I'm doing good.
What's going on in the world today?
I'm just been working on some client stuff today and a larger project I can't talk about.
Oh, could be an exclusive on the show.
Maybe, yeah.
Welcome to the VFX Process. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, I'm Caleb Worcester. I'm a 3D artist based in Kansas City. I do a lot of 3D illustrations. That's how I started out. And now I do 3D animations, specifically just doing everything. And that's what I've done professionally for the last about 5 years.
Nice. How did you get into doing the world of 3D? Did you start out in 2D art? What's your background?
Well, I started out making really dumb illustrations for my friends, just with color pencils back in elementary school, and I charged them like 25 cents.
That's a hustle. That is selling.
It was a hustle.
Yeah, man, you've got to respect the hustle.
I got a couple Snicker bars out of it, so
worth it.
Yeah, they're worth it.
Where did it take you from there?
In high school, my friend was making Sonic fan art on Blender. I was like, "Whoa, what's this?" So him and I got in this competition where we try to one-up each other in Blender. I think one of the first ones I did was like a cursed pickless cage.
Okay.
All in Blender during class, so we were kind of playing hooky. In high school, I started posting some of the little illustrations I made. It took off on Reddit. I began getting like a lot of commission requests for like
nice.
$50, $80, and sort of got started there. And again, selling prints from my parents' basement. It was kind of crazy. It just happened. I don't know. I didn't have a plan.
Awesome, man. We're going to be talking about mainly a short film, but I feel like it's evolved from something prior to that. This ghostly character you can see behind you on a large, really awesome print. Because I've seen it on pieces of your work on your website, portfolio. It's existed prior to this short film.
Yeah, it started out, I would try to upload 2 pieces of art. And through that process, I would kind of go through phases. And this started out as color studies. And I really liked the character. So I did a couple more with this character, and one of them got, I think, 60,000 likes on Instagram. So I was like, okay.
And it just showed people like that character, people like the style, and you thought there's something there.
There's something there. I can keep making this character. I really enjoy the way the light plays onto the cloth. My happy place is making really beautiful lighting, specifically.
I can tell with your work, there's something very consistent and kind of beautiful about the way that you explore, light, shadows, shapes. So this character then, whenever I see it, and me and my wife did a photo shoot dressed in a ghost sheet. So yeah, I can relate to this character in some way, Caleb.
Right, and I think, the sheet ghost that's not very scary is just such a classic character. And I think also having a blank slate character like this allows people to project their own emotions, which I think is pretty valuable.
Yeah. For
just about a year, I did just ghost content. It did really well, went viral a couple times. And then I sort of started getting burnt out, but I was like, okay, people are a fan of this character, so I'm not just going to leave it and have it be unfinished, I guess. Like, it needs to have a conclusion, it needs to have an end. So I decided to make Under the Thicket as sort of just a bit of a thank you, a bit of a conclusion to that chapter where I was just making a lot of ghost stuff. Didn't know what I was getting into.
It's very like lo-fi vibes, music, emotion.
That for me is a lot easier than trying to tell a cohesive story. It was very challenging to make a story and then execute it well, which I think I did okay.
I think you did more than okay.
I mean, the story is not really there in the way that I like, but the emotion is there, so I'm happy with that.
Yeah, clearly, it's full of emotion, things like life's impermanence, transience, all that stuff. What kind of emotions did you want to convey when coming up with a story for it?
I wanted it to be meditative a little bit, where people could kind of just sit with the nature, because this was inspired by a trail that I go to a lot. Most locations are just ripped straight from the trail. I wanted people to get to sit at the trail that I go to and sort of breathe a little bit. And then I wanted people to be sad at the ending. I wanted it to leave a impact.
On social media and people's reactions, they kind of interpret it in their own ways, which I think it's quite natural for people to do when watching short emotive pieces like this. So that's kind of fun to, I imagine, to kind of read people's responses and reactions to something that you've created like that.
Right. It's why I haven't wanted to give people a definitive answer on what the story means, because I enjoy reading your story a lot more than my story. So,
it's got a very arty kind of painterly quality to it. These compositions carefully considered. You seem to really like that foreground silhouetting and shaping like the center of the frame. You've got the deer and the stag in the field, the diner shot. It just seems like a recurring kind of composition shot. Is that one that you love to do? It's a beautiful execution, of course.
Yeah, it's a bit of a holdover from illustration, because that was sort of a standby with a lot of my, I guess, nature pieces in illustration, because I noticed that, especially 3D, you really need something in the foreground to contrast against, because oftentimes the light in the foreground flattens everything. So in order to impart depth, even though you're working in a 3D program, you need something to sort of set the scale and set the values.
Can you just talk about your process and approach to that when building these worlds?
I think a lot of 3D artists really love being technically accurate. Mesh is complete. The topography looks good. But I discovered early on that it doesn't matter, especially for stylized 3D. You can use random meshes as a paintbrush in a 3D space. Most of the plants in Under the Thicket are one plant model duplicated a million times. It's a brush. Like a 2D software, you have a brush, and that brush set helps create the style of your piece. You can do that with 3D. You can have a 3D object that's the style brush that becomes the geometry of the space.
Obviously, you've got your illustration background. It feels like that background and knowledge that you have, it really plays into the 3D worlds that you build. Like when you layer up these compositions, you layer up these worlds.
Well, the fun part is that all my illustration is 3D and then painted over in 2D.
Oh, okay.
So it's all over paintings in Photoshop.
That makes sense, because I saw a piece of concept art, and I think it's one of the first shots in the diner where...
Oh, that's by Anton Maximenko.
Did you provide the 3D scene for the paint over, though?
No.
Oh, really?
He's extremely talented.
Ah, amazing. So you was replicating that concept art?
Yes.
You did a damn good job of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I told him to give me something really tough because I felt like a challenge. So he gave me a fisheye lens.
Yeah.
I actually found him from a contest I did on my Instagram.
Amazing.
So I reached out to him if he wanted to do some concept art, and he was super down. So
shout out. That's awesome, man. So talking about Blender, the workflow, any technicalities, the technical approach, were there any kind of specific features or tools of Blender that were kind of essential for this project in particular?
I guess
Does the cloth?
A cloth sim. That's just the regular Blender cloth. I'm trying to think. The alt duplicate function in Blender.
Oh, yeah.
Can be able to do without that.
Of course, man. Of course.
Instancing. Geometry nodes.
Oh, okay.
the grasses, geometry nodes.
The end credit sequence, those kind of effects with the rain. There's some kind of like reflections and like lens imperfections or something creating that. How do you get that effect?
That is rain texture on the front, and then you can use the fracture node on glass, and then you just make the glass material to be refractive in RGB space. So it creates a, in Into the Spider-Verse when things get out of focus.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So it shifts the RGB over in different refraction lengths. So it creates this really interesting blur effect, especially if you set the camera blur to be nothing.
Ah, okay.
Then all of a sudden you have all these little textures that keep moving. And
when I was watching this piece, it seems so, obvious that the way that the light moves, the shadows and things, and it plays a part of like the composition of the frame. It's a really nice way to kind of bring it to life a little bit like naturally. It just does a lot for such a simple, obvious trick. I
think the only challenging part with that was to make sure that all the shots led into the other. What I wanted to do was just go through a full day-night cycle, so it would feel pretty complete. I thought it'd be a really interesting effect to pull off.
Can I put you on the spot, Caleb? Is there any Blender scene that we could open up and do a screen share?
Yeah.
The exterior diner scene, for example. Do you remember what shot number that is?
Here it is. I think this is Blender 4.3.
What version, out of interest, did you use to create this short?
This is a new computer, so all I have is 3.6 and 4.3. But I think this was mostly 4.0 and 4.2.
What kind of machine spec do you have at the moment, Caleb, to run it?
This right now is a beefy machine. 4070 Ti Super. AMD 9000 series, something like that. I built it this December. So this all right here was on a 1050 Ti.
Oh, really?
Yeah, an Intel i5.
So it was made on a lower spec computer. Do you have to consider that when you're making it? And does it provide limitations because of the hardware?
Yeah, I'll show you the scene that broke my computer if I could find it.
You could probably open up all the scenes now on that machine.
I could absolutely do that. Yeah, there's the scene. And it's like a 5-second shot. And the key is that I went in too much for realism. So if you go over here, you'll see like a million little plant particles, and each tree is its own tree. And my computer just couldn't run it. So I had to learn to be very thrifty with my power. It was a learning experience. This one it wouldn't render out.
Out of interest, what did you do to the scene to optimize it in a way that did render on that machine? As painful as it may have been.
What did I do? I think I got rid of some of these plants and then just hoped.
Yeah, prayed and hoped, crossed the fingers.
Yeah, I think I got rid of the actual water sim and I just made it, I think, a displacement texture.
Gotcha.
Correctly.
Now that they're in here, Caleb, could we just look at the lighting setup, turn off all the lights, and just talk to us about getting to this final image and your thought process and techniques? I know you said it's a simple lighting setup, but it'd be great to just look at it and break it down.
Right, so this is just a sun. That's all it is. And it's going at the speed of all the other shots, like rotating, so you can watch it right over here, crest over this rock. And I think the key is, especially for stylized scenes, and this is a trick that I used consistently, is to make sure that your textures are, for this, it's a toon BSDF. So you end up getting those lovely, like, full, triangles of light, but then it's mixed with a translucent BSDF mixed with a toon BSDF. What that does is it allows the trees to glow. Like, you could sit right here and all the trees are going to kind of glow with the light passing through them. Yeah. And you'll notice when you look really close, it's just triangles. Yeah. They don't need to be anything more for a scene like this.
Were there any kind of things that you discovered along the way to give you an effect that you thought, now I've got to go back and change it in older scenes?
Oh, I had to go back and re-render everything in order to get clouds moving in the right direction.
Oh, really?
I watched it through and I was like, oh no.
Okay. Oh no. Because someone's going to point something out like that.
The clouds were all a late addition, and they all move in the physically accurate direction, so you can watch them. They're all parented to one cloud.
It's a really nice touch, though, because I think people can overlook sometimes. I said it earlier in the conversation that, those subtle kind of shadows that are changing because of light interaction with clouds or trees, clearly here when that light's passing through the clouds, there's so much kind of spill and interaction onto all these shapes and trees that, brings life to that shot, even though it's a static camera. There's not much going on.
I think that's some of the beauty of nature, is that it's not static and that it is always changing. And so to kind of set it in autumn, where everything is really changing very quickly.
Do you use much atmospherics and like fog to build depth? What's it like layering up these scenes with depth? You mentioned lighting's very simple.
I can show you. Let me pull up. So this is a pretty simple shot right here. And this is a trick that I use for a lot of things. If you look at the atmospheric, we got the volumetrics, obviously, coming through. I can turn those off real quick. Yeah, so this is without the volumetrics. It's a lot more flat. But then back here, I pull us back. This is what the scene looks like. It's not very pretty. This is the atmosphere. So this imparts a level of distance and separation between the far background and the foreground and the midground. As the sun moves, it completely changes the dynamic of the shot. Yeah, it gives it a very moody, I'm a big fan of Over the Garden Wall. If you've ever watched Over the Garden Wall.
Can you explain what that is?
It's this Cartoon Network miniseries by Patrick McHale. It's called Over the Garden Wall. And it's, set in autumn, very similar vibes to Under the Thicket. And it uses these nice gradiated backgrounds that are clearly separated, inspired by Americana paintings.
Okay.
The very graphic shapes. That's what I like about this technique, is you get this shape right here. It's very clear, and then there's a tree behind it, but it allows for very graphical illustration shapes to be present.
Rendering wise, are we Eevee? Are we rendering things cycles? Can you just talk about that setup?
Yeah, cycles in 4K. I found that 4K is ironically a lot faster than 2K.
Why is that?
I don't know about faster, but maybe just about the same amount of time, but you get a 4K result anyway. Because when you're dealing with a lot of geometry, a lot of volumetric effects, the denoiser really likes high resolution stuff because the little artifacts are far less prevalent.
Okay.
So you can get away with a lot less samples, a lot less whatever. You render it out of 4K and people aren't going to be able to tell the denoising artifacts are there.
Nice. Top Caleb tip, do it in 4K. Can you remember any kind of the most challenging part technically of this production?
The cat.
Okay. Tell us about the cat.
Yeah, I had 2 cat models. I animated out all the cat shots. I looked through it a month later and I'm like, this is awful. This is terrible. That the feet were floating. I didn't know how to do IK.
I was going to ask, how was it rigged?
Now it's IK.
Yeah.
So it's a regular IK, I think the Blender supplied cat rig.
Oh, okay, yeah. Is that through Rigify or something?
Yeah, Rigify.
Yeah.
So I re-rigged it. I got some advice from a couple people. It's still a little bit janky, but it's a lot better than what it was. This was during the short. My process was non-linear. So usually I would go through and make all the scenes, all the animations in a rough way, then just do that linearly. And then I would have to go back and polish everything before finishing up and rendering.
Okay. And when you talk about polishing, what is the Caleb's polishing phase? What does that look like?
Yeah, usually, since I'm making a lot of decisions very quickly through the process, usually there's a couple mistakes. The leaves are way too big. The composition doesn't look right. The camera's not moving right. The character's not moving right. So it allows me to make a secondary decision from an impartial perspective, which I think is important because you spent time away from it. You have fresh eyes. You can come back in, pretend to be someone and kind of pretend to be a boss and just tear it apart,
That's always better, isn't it, to leave, to come back the next day with fresh eyes and just say, what was I doing last night?
Exactly.
On a project like this, you call the shots, you can do whatever you want. It's a world that you're creating. How do you manage yourself?
That's a good question. I think I just really wanted to get it done.
Yeah.
And usually it's very rewarding to make a shot. The process is usually very intuitive for me. It's more fun than anything else I could be doing that evening.
You create a shot, it's beautiful, you love it. Is it tempting to just put it out on social media, or holding it off and then saving it for the trailer or the final piece?
I don't know. I was not very good at keeping it a secret, so I think I was posting on my social media all the time.
That's good, actually. Yeah. If you've got like supporters and a following, I guess that can be an inspiration and feedback that you can get from people on the fly. I think that's quite a nice way to make a short, especially when you're on your own.
Yeah, asking my family, they'll just sigh very heavily and be like, oh my God, again. Because I think I showed it to them about 1 million times.
What are they looking at this stage, and what are you asking from them?
I look directly over their shoulder and just stare at them in their eyes, try to make them as uncomfortable as possible. They usually don't know, which is great because I can get someone's perspective of someone who's consumed like Pixar movies, DreamWorks. So if something doesn't look right, that's good that they can tell me that, because I might not be able to see it from where I'm at.
Is there more post work? Is it all in Blender? Is the compositor used for any additional effects and grading wise? Can you just talk about that process, Caleb?
Yeah, so this is what I tell industry people to horrify them a little bit. I put the images straight into the Lightroom. I render out as a PNG sequence. And then I've written a script on my computer to basically copy and paste the color grade for the entire sequence. So then I go grab coffee and just let it render out.
I've never heard of that, but it worked, I guess. What was the reason for it?
I don't know. I was used to it as an illustrator, I think. The workflow up front was very quick.
Okay, interesting. Well, it's always good to know, different people's processes. That's a very unique one, Caleb, but it clearly worked and you got the job done.
Yeah, it's inefficient, but, it was kind of doing things in a dumb way because it's kind of fun to do things in a dumb way.
With the recent Oscar win for the film Flow made in Blender, which is incredible, massive. What kind of impact do you think that has on indie filmmakers using open source software? And do you see it as a turning point for Blender in the industry?
I think that it's been turning a little bit in the structure that media is made in general, but especially animation. We are seeing a lot more small teams making content competing with larger studios. So that's something that we're going to see more of, I think. And I think Flow is a great indication of that. It was a great movie. Gintz is a genius, I think.
Incredible.
Excited to see what he makes next. I've watched Away as well, and it's incredible, which was his solo movie. He made an entire movie by himself.
It's just so inspiring, isn't it? That, they're giving the power to the small teams, the individuals, and going up against the big guns.
Flow. Thank you to Blender, and I hope that it will open doors to independent animation filmmakers around the world.
I think it's just like a historical moment in not just animation, but, filmmaking.
Yeah. And I think that increasingly we've been seeing that impactful art doesn't need a big budget behind it, because that's not what makes art good. Oftentimes, big budget films will be good, but having a impactful and lasting experience is not directly linked to the amount of money and the amount of people and the amount of, oftentimes it gets lost because you need to satisfy investors. You need to satisfy the massive amount of money that you spent on this film. So you end up overworking it to death in order to justify the expectations.
Absolutely. Talking about social media earlier, if you're posting content like yourself, you were posting work in progresses and things like that. It brings the viewers along with you in the journey before it's even out. It's a great way to kind of build that support early on and get people to invest in the process, the characters, the story.
Yeah, I would say I'd be cautious if you have a following to not overdo it, because oftentimes, from my experience, you can hit a point where audience expectation is larger than the project itself.
How important is it, would you say, to watch other stuff, have things that influence you and inspire you to create work?
Art builds on itself. So you need to consume things that you like, do experiences that you like in order to figure out what you like to make. People think that creativity comes innately, which to some degree it does, that it springs forward like just a well from nothing. Like it's a part of you. It's always been a part of you. But I'd say that creativity comes from what you like, and you can't like anything without doing anything, without enjoying art.
To then build your own worlds that you want to live in, I imagine that's kind of like rewarding.
The process of making it is where I find joy, not so much consuming my own art. I only see the flaws. If people find joy in it, then that's amazing. But it's not part of my habit to sort of go through my old art and live in those worlds again.
Well, I apologise going into the old Blender scenes, Caleb.
No, it's all good.
Have you revisited it much with the new machine? And it's like, wouldn't it be amazing if I was working on it with this computer?
God, yeah. Well, no, because I just would have made it better.
You'll always look back on work and go, I could make that better now. But that's part of growth. That's part of, you evolving as an artist and a storyteller.
And honestly, I think a more dramatic story might not have suited the ghost character well.
And it's a feeling that carries the story as much as the story itself,
That's what I wanted to show people is this is how it feels to watch the sun rise. I think just sitting and not doing anything in a field and paying attention is really valuable. I would recommend it. I like the way the light shines through the leaves and makes them glow from the underside. So I figured out how to do that in 3D.
Do you take photos of these moments for references, or do you just kind of take them in and keep them in your head?
I take photos and I take audio. So a lot of the birdsong, a lot of the atmospheric stuff is just recorded in the field by me.
Amazing. And then the score.
Yeah, so that is by Edvard Grieg. It's called Asa's Death. The Czech Symphony Orchestra made their recordings public. So I used that as the ending theme. And then I had my composer, Yusi Liu. She's playing the piano, and she really pulled it together because it's very important to get your audio right if you're doing a short film. So
nice. So for anybody that is making a short film in Blender or other softwares, what advice would you give them?
It's challenging. It's maybe one of the most challenging things you can do if you're a single individual. But figure out your motivation structure and what motivates you. Make sure that you're getting joy out of it. And if you're not getting joy out of it, then pause for a little bit. Because if you're not happy making it, then you're going to burn out. Make sure that it's bringing you happiness. That's my advice. If it's not, then what's the point?
It's a great piece of advice. And what about for those people who feel overwhelmed with the idea of just actually starting a project and taking that through to completion?
Very short and very bad. Just do a lot of that and you'll be all good. Don't even worry about making something good. Just make something bad. Don't show it to anyone if you feel embarrassed. That's how you do it. You just gotta be bad until you're good.
Yeah, and it's like you can do it, and nothing have to be perfect at the start, because you will look back at people's work from 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and it's like, that's evolved so much, but they wouldn't have got to this point now if they hadn't started out what they considered was a bad piece of work. But it's just that step that you need to take, I think, sometimes, and overcome it.
Right, and I'd say try to learn one new technique every single time you do a new project if you're starting out. Even if you're expert, I think that's what you should be doing is learning something new, because I think that's part of what sparks the creative process, for me at least, is learning. So
and they do say if you're not learning, you're not like growing.
That's how I felt about illustration.
Okay.
I think I hit a wall with it, and I moved on to animation, in part because it's something that I wasn't good at. I didn't have a lot of experience with it, and I've been feeling very inspired by learning how to do character animation, how to do environmental animation, how to do a million different jobs. And if you're feeling upset with one job, you just do another one.
What was it like for you to step into that world, and what advice can you give?
Well, I was a little lucky because I was working with a big client who wanted animation. They originally came to me for my illustrations.
Okay.
and they wanted animation.
And they go, Caleb, can you animate this? And you go, yeah, man, that's easy. I can do it. And then you're like, oh shit, I've got to go and learn it.
Yeah, exactly. But then for a year working with them, I gradually got better and better and better and better at character animation.
But you kind of have to just go, yeah, I can do that, and just buckle up, jump in, and just kind of learn it. If you really want to do it, say yes, and then you're growing as an artist, you're impressing the client.
Yeah, I have a story of doing something like that.
Please enlighten us.
Yeah, when I was 19, I did a bunch of spaceship illustrations, based on real world rocket missions. And one of the systems engineers for Blue Origin, which is a space company based in the US, reached out to me. They wanted a commemorative poster it's an HLS, which is a human lander system in collaboration with Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman. So I made that for them, little 19-year-old me. They loved it. And then I printed off, I had a little wide format printer. They wanted posters of it. So they're like, yeah, can you get print out posters for our team? I'm like, yeah, sure. Turns out their team is freaking massive. And so I had top officials from Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Blue Origin. I got an Etsy page. So I was creating custom orders for every single one of them because it was sensitive information at the time. It was insane because, I was printing these from my parents' basement,
Nice.
And packaging them up on the kitchen table. So
amazing. That's a great story. And it's surprising who's actually looking at your work online, right?
It is. Yeah, it is. I'd recommend it for anyone who has a tough skin.
Mm-hmm. Because it's a vulnerable space, isn't it? In all honesty,
Every time I posted on the subreddit, it would do really well, but then it would have what felt like it was probably 2 or 3 people, but it felt like 1,000 commenting below and being like, "Oh, you got the wheels wrong."
Oh, you know what? There's always someone who has to know everything about something. They go, "You've this should be 1 millimeter larger, or this color is actually off." It's like, come on. Out of interest, just pure curiosity, are you doing any more short films in your own time?
Yeah, I'm doing a 12-minute one that I am 3 minutes and 40 seconds through.
Yeah, tell us briefly about it and what we can look forward to.
It's called Deadfall. You'll probably be able to find sometime. But it is significantly more difficult in scope, with a lot more realism. So it's about a mouse that hunts and kills cats.
Oh, so the cat's getting it in.
Cat's getting it. He has full knight armor, full plate armor.
Yeah.
And it is a little bit of a thriller / it's still got the Caleb vibes, I guess you could call them.
It is a style. It's definitely a Caleb vibes, and it's very recognizable.
It's got all that, but I wanted to do some action, so that's what's been speaking to me. So,
well, we wish you all the best with it. Hopefully it won't take another year. If you've got a faster machine, can we rely on that?
It's going to take
3 years.
Maybe. Yeah, we'll see.
Well, it'll be ready when it's ready. Can you just point people in all the directions of where you exist online?
Look up my name on Google. I have a pretty unique last name, so everything will pop up down there. I increasingly do some breakdowns on my website for the actual VFX process, do scene breakdowns, shot breakdowns. You can always reach out as well. I enjoy talking about it. Etsy, my print shop. That's where this is printed off on.
Well, thanks, Caleb, for just hanging out with us, sharing your insights, your knowledge. I really appreciate your time. That's great, man.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Jamie.
Pleasure. Take it easy, Caleb. See you soon, man.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Yeah. Thanks for inviting me out.